Can you see it now?
Hey, Jessica, you're there. It's looking good.
Okay, perfect.
Excellent. And Christopher, you still with us?
I am. I'm keeping myself on mute right now, but I'm here.
Okay, excellent. Going. If I can get everybody's attention. Well, good afternoon, everybody. I want to welcome everyone back to this session. This session is a panel on A2J Author. A2J Author is a software tool that allows non-tech people to develop and build customer-friendly web-based forms and document assembly that are court-ready documents. A2J has been around for a long time, and actually for over a decade now, and I believe we're up to A2J Author 6.0.
Yes.
With that, we have an amazing panel. We have Jessica Frank from the Computer Assisted Learning Institute. We heard from John Mayer from there this morning. And we also have Christopher Alfano from Illinois Legal Aid. Both of these, both A2J Author and the Illinois website were referred to earlier by David Bonebrake. So we have a fantastic panel. Jessica and Christopher, welcome.
Thank you.
Jessica, why don't I turn it over to you and let you kick things off, and we'll follow up with Christopher, and I'm sure there'll be lots of questions from the room.
Okay, perfect. So thank you for having me. And again, I'm Jessica Frank. I've been working with A2J Author for about 4.5 years now, but as Kristian mentioned, our project has been going on since about 2000, and then 2004 is when the software was created. So I'm going to start our story of A2J Author on kind of a depressing note, but one that many of you in the audience are probably familiar with. There's a huge justice gap between those that can afford lawyers and those that cannot afford a lawyer. In 2015, in the United States alone, there were 63 million people who were eligible for legal assistance, for free civil legal help in the United States. However, there are less than 5,000 attorneys working in the U.S. In legal aid organizations across the country. Multiple studies then have shown that over 80% of the civil legal needs of those low-income people go unmet each year, due in part to the shortage of free or low-cost legal assistance. And low-income people, by necessity then, are becoming self-represented litigants. These self-represented litigants then are facing legal issues that are critical to their life, things like child custody, foreclosure, eviction, debt cases. In New York State, 96% of the people in consumer debt cases, child custody, child support, eviction are unrepresented. So one of the biggest issues faced by self-represented litigants is the overwhelming pile of paperwork and legal terms, legalese, that is required to even start a case or handle an answer if you are sued. And that is where A2J Author comes in. So A2J Author has been working on the problem of helping people without lawyers overcome the burden of cumbersome court forms for over a decade. When I've given this presentation in the past, I put up a screenshot on the left of the U.S. IRS 1040 form. That's our tax form that U.S. citizens have to file every year. So I was hoping that this would be the experience of having to deal with a burdensome form would translate to Canada. And so I Googled Canadian tax forms, and I guess unfortunately for both of us, you also have cumbersome tax forms. So this is a shared cultural issue that we all face. So forms like the tax form show just how difficult it can be to accomplish basically relatively simple forms, simple activities. So you have every year you have to file your taxes, but yet it's a pain, and there's a lot of things you aren't sure you're getting right. And imagine instead if you're in a situation where you could lose your children or you could lose your home. So the dealing with burdensome forms and having the added on problems of the stress of a situation makes it very difficult for low-income people to deal with their court forms. On the other hand, we have the A2J Author interface, which is what I'm showing here on the right-hand side of the screen. And so A2J Author, we started in 2000 with a study called the Meeting the Needs of Self-Represented Litigants. This study was done by my former boss, Professor Ron Stout at Chicago-Kent Law School, and they looked at the overall process of how people interact with the forum and how they get justice in a courtroom, and worked with our Institute of Design to come up with a prototype called the Illinois Joint Simplified Divorce, which helped people get a simple divorce in Illinois. Out of that prototype came A2J Author then in 2004, when Chicago-Kent partnered with my current employer, John Mayer, who you heard from earlier at CALI, the Center for Computer Assisted Legal Instruction. The basics of how document assembly works, or how A2J Author works, is that it was meant as an interface for document assembly. Initially, and still to today, the back end on A2J Author that produces a document is Hot Docs. But the Hot Docs interface for end users was way too complicated still for the most part. It was very form-like. So if you've ever filled out a Google form or done any online form, it was similar to that with text and a blank, and you fill in the blank. The point with A2J Author is that we wanted to make it a little bit smoother, a little bit more give and take, but I'll talk about that in a second. The basics of document assembly is that the end user fills out the interview, which you see in the first part of the screenshot, the little lady there. Behind every one of those fields is a variable. Those variables are stored in an answer file. That answer file then is sent to a server. In most cases in the U.S., it goes to Law Help Interactive, which is a server that I know Dave Bonebreak from LSC mentioned. It's the LSC-funded server for legal aid in the U.S. So that answer file is sent to LHI, Law Help Interactive, which puts it together with the Hot Docs template, and the values held within those variables are then put into the right places on the form, which so you can kind of see the flow here. John Doe, date of birth, address, and country or county are all put in their appropriate spots. And the end user never sees the middle interaction. They only see the front end interface, which is A2J Author, and the actual document that is produced then. This is more of a global view of how it works. You have the end user accessing the guided interview from either their desktop or, very soon to be in the U.S., the mobile version, which can be accessed by any modern browser. So smartphones, tablets, any of that works. They use the A2J guide interview and go through the questions step by step. Their answers are transmitted to the server, and the server produces a completed document for the end user. Here's what the A2J Author interface looks like. It was designed to be a lot of clean space for the end user. There's not a lot of text on the screen for any given question. It's meant to be blank in the background, sort of. They're on a pathway. They're headed to the courthouse. It doesn't have to be the courthouse. Not every document goes to the court. So you can have a customized ending point, your legal aid organization's logo, a picture of a generic building, anything you like. But by default, it's the courthouse. There are steps along the way. So steps are the big chunks, the titles of your outline section, basically, if you were thinking about this as a document. Those steps give the end user an idea of how far they have to progress down the path as well. And as they answer questions, they get closer in distance to the courthouse as well. We have avatars that are the guide avatar, the lady in the suit here in this screenshot, can be either a male or a female avatar. The end user selects their gendered avatar, either male or female. And the skin tones of the avatars are, we have a range of 1, 2, and 3, which is a range from medium to dark, which I have a slide that shows you our different avatar options. So A2J Author has been fairly successful in the United States. We've been used over 3 million times on Law Help Interactive, which is that national server I mentioned, and 1.8 million documents have been generated from our guided interviews. This shows there's a curve, so we get we've been building up in time, and the increase in the number of states has increased our usage. And this isn't even accounting for 2016 at all, and we get about over half a million uses a year now, and for the last 2 or 3 years. So we're at about 3.25 million or so now, now that we're into quarter 3 of 2016. There are 42 states in the U.S. that use some form of A2J guided interview, that either their legal aid organization is using it or their court is using it. And it ranges in spectrum. Some states have a lot of them. I know Chris will probably talk about it. Illinois has about 70 guided interviews. There's some states with only 1. So there's different levels within the U.S., but we're at about 42 states now. A2J Author can also be used for e-filing. E-filing, I'm not sure if that's in Canada, but it's the idea of taking a document from the end user directly into the court's management system. Same idea here. The 4 federal courts in the U.S. use A2J as a front end to e-filing. Same process. End user answers the questions using A2J. It's sent to a hot doc server. The federal courts have their own hot doc server. A document is generated, and then that document can be transmitted into the court's management system or court management system. 4 federal courts I mentioned that allow for pro se e-filing in the U.S. are in St. Louis, Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Florida, and Missouri, St. Louis, Missouri. A2J is also used around the world. So I think today it was mentioned that Legal Aid of Ontario uses A2J Author. I've also heard that we're used in Quebec and Australia, Guam, and Puerto Rico, and the U.S. Virgin Islands as well. The uses of A2J Author are, we don't track it as well as we probably should, because A2J Author is free to any legal aid organization, court, or nonprofit across the country. It's also free to any law school who is a CALI member. You can check out cali.org if you are a law school there and you're interested. But it can be downloaded. We have a GitHub repo where you can get our viewer to then play the guided interviews and host it on your own website. So if you want to host it in Canada instead of in the US, you can. And we are about expanding justice for everybody, not just those in the U.S., even though we have been focusing on that because our primary funding has come from the Legal Services Corporation, where Dave Bonebreak is from. I'm running short on time here, so I'll go through this a little quickly, but looking forward with A2J Author, we've seen mobile as the new frontier. We've been working on a new version of our software for almost 4 years now that allows A2J Author to, we completely rewrote the code, threw it out. Older versions of A2J Author are in Flash, and if you don't know, Flash is being killed off slowly, so our new version is completely web-based. As you can see from this little video, it's mobile responsive, and so however the end user comes to A2J Author, the size of their screen, our viewer adapts to that. So you as the author, the creator of the guided interviews, you make one interview and it works across multiple platforms. Sorry, I'm not sure that was blank, but this is an example of learn more text that can be added to a guided interview. So this smaller pop out in the front here screenshot shows what a learn more graphic looks like. One of the special features of A2J Author is that you can add in learn more graphics or learn more videos in addition to text, and we call that just-in-time learning features. So the end user's avatar thinks a question, the guide avatar can reply with a picture or a video or text itself. So the question could be something like, how many children do you have? And the end user could think, well, does this include my stepchildren? Does it include my niece who lives with me? How is that calculated? And the avatar, the guide avatar, can reply with whatever the legal specifications are. Where should I sign on the form can be a question they have, and you can have a picture of the form and have it circled about where to sign. So that's one of the special features of A2J. We also allow videos, and who doesn't love a video of a baby as a demo here? This is my daughter at a month old. But this shows you how you can have short video clips built into the guided interview as well. We have 9 languages right now, and I just got the files this morning for 5 additional languages. So by next week, A2J will be available in 14 different languages. Legal Aid of Ontario actually did our French translation, so thanks to them for increasing our reach there. But A2J can be made available in a wide variety of languages. Our translation file is about 30 words that needs to be translated, and then that language is available in A2J. The translations are for the Chrome around the guided interview, so the back button, the next, continue, yes, no, male, female. The text of the guided interview itself is not translated. That would be up to who's ever creating the guided interview, but we do support these languages. This is our suite of avatars, guide avatars that can lead your end user down the path. We've updated how they look and the range of skin tones that we have to be more accommodating. And then soon to be released will be our own document assembly within A2J Author. That's version 6 that Kristian was mentioning. And you won't need any other software to produce simple documents. A2J Author will be able to, without hot docs, produce simple forms, letters, motions. We don't have all the rich formatting that Hot Docs has because it's built in Word, but we're more of the Google Docs to their Word. So not everything, but it's pretty good, and we're free. So here's some user feedback that has come from actual court users in New York State. If you do a quick Google of New York DIY testimonials, a website will pop up that the New York courts have put up where actual end users have written in survey answers about the A2J guided interviews in New York. But then I guess I'll turn it back over to Chris. My contact information is here. Feel free to reach out to me if you have questions. But I will stop presenting then and hand it over to Chris.
All right, thank you, Jessica.
Thank you, Jessica. Christopher, if you'd like to.
Sure, let me just take a second to make sure I've got the right stuff up.
No worries.
All right.
Hey, you put on a tie for us today.
I did, and you can see it matches the color of our logo.
Well done.
Yes, I'm glad that we're doing this now because about 2 months ago we launched our new website. Had we done it 2 months ago, our stuff wouldn't have looked nearly as good, so thank you. My name is Chris Alfano. I'm the automated document producer at Illinois Legal Aid Online. Kristian invited me here to speak with you this afternoon, so thank you everyone for having me. I'm going to talk very briefly about how we use A2J Author at Illinois Legal Aid Online. So we offer 74 automated documents for pro se users and legal aid advocates. Some of those interviews are targeted at pro ses, and some are more for the legal aid advocates, assuming that the user is an attorney. 52 of those documents are A2J interviews. And as of June 30th of this year, so just quarter 1 and quarter 2 this year, we had 19,000 A2J interviews run and over 8,500 documents assembled by those interviews. So that accounts for about half of our total assemblies. You can see in the figure below, about half are hot docs and half are A2J. And in the next couple slides, I'm going to get into the advantages of using A2J Author as opposed to hot docs. So I don't know how familiar everyone is with the two different pieces of software, but when you're starting a new automated document project, you have to choose whether you're using hot docs or A2J for the interview component. And some factors which we found favor using A2J Author are when the interview is for pro se users, if the interview is going to take less than 30 minutes to complete, and that's because you feel the A2J interview is better suited to a one-time session. So if you sit down and complete the interview in one session, I think the user is going to get a better experience out of A2J Author than if they're leaving and coming back to it and having to go through questions that they already answered. The answers will be filled in, but sometimes, unless you build it into the interview, they're not going to go back to exactly where they left off. And we do break that rule quite often anyway, so these are not concrete rules. And if you are using the interview to help explain a legal process, A2J is extremely useful. Hot docs can include help text. You can have extra text on screen, but it is not very well done, I think. Compared to A2J, we have the Learn More and pop-ups and everything in A2J Author. It can really help you explain a legal process to a user while they're completing that form. And we all know that users don't necessarily want to read about something before they do it. They just want to jump in and do it. So it helps if you can explain what they're doing while they're completing that document. So really quick, I did want to show a sample of what a hot docs interview looks like. This is our Divorce Without Children interview. As you can see, it's got a number of questions on screen. There's not much in the way of help text. It can be a little bit visually intimidating for some users, but you can have a lot on screen at once, so if a form is information heavy, it does help with that. This is a sample of one of our A2J interviews. This is name change for an adult. It's a fairly straightforward interview, but what we're able to do with this is break everything out question by question. It's presented to the user in very small, manageable bites. It's got a clean interface. It's very intuitive. There's the big buttons. I know Jessica was showing you version 6.0, which looks much better than this. This is the old version that we're currently using. This is 4.0, I believe. But still very intuitive. It is Flash-based, so that's not great, but we're moving away from that soon. So how does A2J Author benefit pro se users? It can make the interview much easier for a user with lower reading comprehension abilities. Hot docs is great for information-heavy forms like getting the financial information for divorce laid out in a form, or the tax return that Jessica mentioned would be another. Anything that's just a lot of numbers, entering a bunch of information. If you want to actually learn about something, A2J is much more helpful. They've got the Learn More and the pop-up screens. You can keep a minimum amount of text on screen. You can just have the question on screen, but you can have the Learn More button. You can have pop-ups within that, so the user can learn more about what they're filling in and get more information. And as I mentioned before, it's very intuitive. I've never had anyone encounter any problem using the interface in A2J Author. It's a second nature for anyone who's used a computer. And as I was discussing earlier, you can explain the legal process while the user fills out the form. This is huge for us. So the earlier questions can be used to explain the legal remedy. We have in Illinois an interview that allows the user to expunge or seal their criminal records. And so in those early questions, we can explain to them what the difference is between expungement and sealing. You know, expungement includes the criminal record, but it is very difficult to qualify for. Sealing hides the criminal record, but you can do it if you have certain felony convictions and all sorts of things that wouldn't qualify for expungement. So we can explain that to the user in the earlier questions and really know what they're in for later on in the interview. And we can also tell the user what they need to complete the interview. So going back to the expungement example, they need to have their rap sheet and their court dispositions before they get started, because they're going to need to file those along with the documents, and they're going to need information from that. So we can tell them right up front, you need to have this information. If you don't have it, there's no point in completing the interview. And in the final question, sort of last questions of the interview, you can outline the next steps and how to file. You can do this in hot docs as well, but it's just going to be a big block of text. So if you can do it in A2J Author, you can lay it out in 3 or 4 questions, have the pop-ups and Learn Mores, and really let them know how to get their document from LHI, how to print it, how to take it to the court, how to file, and so forth. So I did want to speak briefly on how we choose which forms to automate in A2J Author or hot docs. This is sort of key to reaching the most people possible. In my opinion, the best A2J interviews are going to offer remedy achieve on their own. So you're not going to get too far out there and try to get them through, I don't know, like a really complicated divorce where there's a lot of money involved, or a complicated civil suit. Things like uncontested divorce, simple divorce, small claims, criminal record expungement. Those are best suited to automating with A2J or hot docs. And if it can be used everywhere within a state or province, that's definitely a plus. In Illinois, a lot of the individual counties throughout the state have their own forms that they still want to use exclusively. So that has been a problem for us. We do have some forms that can be used throughout the entire state. When we have a county-specific form, we choose to do the more populous counties. So Cook County, which contains Chicago, has about half the population of Illinois living within that one county. So if we're going to do one county's form, we're going to do Cook County. Or one of the other more populous counties. I don't think we have any for any counties that are less than 500,000 people. And of course, you want to do something that involves an area of law that's underserved by attorneys. Things that are prohibitively expensive for the user, like criminal record expungement, for example. I keep going back to that, but that's one of our more popular ones. You're not going to pay an attorney for that usually. The people who want it are seeking it because they can't get a job. They don't have any money to pay an attorney. People who want a joint simplified divorce, they don't have enough assets to really warrant hiring an attorney. So you want to try and find those areas that are not being served by attorneys. That also keeps everyone happy because you're not taking the attorney's business, which we know is always in consideration. And so I just wanted to also outline a few of our more popular interviews so you can get some examples of those. And these are, of course, the numbers for the first 2 quarters of this year. So divorce is by far the most popular, and that is about a quarter of our total interviews run and assemblies. And then next would be order of protection. This is for people who want to be safe from a spouse or family member who's been abusive. And the parenting plan is our most popular A2J interview and our third most popular document overall. And this is a document that lays out custody and visitation for 2 parents in a divorce or custody case, but they don't call it custody or visitation anymore in Illinois, so the A2J interview does really help us explain what those new terms mean and exactly what is entailed by that form. I also wanted to cover our development process. If you're doing this for the first time, I think this might be helpful. It's sort of a 4-step process for us. We start with a scope document, and this assumes you're working with a developer outside of your organization. If you're doing this in-house, it's going to be a little different. You're just probably going to want to jump into it. But if you're working with a hot docs consultant or A2J consultant or any sort of independent contractor, I like to start with the scope document. This is going to explain the goal of the project, the scenarios and cover. You can list the forms, and you can provide an interview outline or even the specific question text that you want for each question. The developer is not always going to be an attorney. More often than not, they will not be an attorney, so you might want to write that text on your own and send that to the developer. And I have had a lot of really positive feedback on these scope documents. The developers find them very helpful, and it saves you money to tell them exactly what you want because they can complete the project in less time. So then when you're working with the developer, you want to be communicating with them throughout the process. Don't just wait till they're done. Talk to them constantly about what you want and what they're doing. You can use web conferencing like we're using now to demo certain features and make sure that things are being done the way you want. It's a really useful tool. There are tons of free web conferencing software platforms available. Skype is one of them, and Google Hangouts. So you don't necessarily have to pay for fancy software. And then when you are testing that project, you're going to want to test it locally on your own computer and on whatever you're using to host it. So if you're testing it on LHI, if you're hosting it on LHI, test it on LHI. You can get help from interns, other staff members. If you have anyone in the office who's not an attorney, I find it helps to get their input because you might be approaching it in a different mindset than a pro se user would. And then when you publish the interview, it's important to communicate it to your partner organization so that they know it's done, it's out there, they can start using it. You're going to need to check periodically for updates to the law. Very important to make sure things don't get out of date. It's a little bit embarrassing attorney that there's a problem with your form, so you do want to keep up on the changes to the law. And of course, the development doesn't end there. You're going to be improving this continually based on feedback that you get from your users, from your partners, or your staff members who are helping you to test. And lastly, I did want to go over the structure that we've developed for A2J interviews at ILAO. I do see a lot of interviews from people who are just starting out in A2J Author that are kind of all over the place. So I did want to go through the structure that we use. This is what works for us. You might find that other things work better for you, but for us, it helps to start with an introduction. We say what the interview is for, because we don't know how they ended up on it necessarily. Hopefully they're coming through our website, but then we'll have a legal advice disclaimer. So we do not want to have any appearance of the unauthorized practice of law in our interviews. So we're telling them up front, this is not legal advice. You understand this is not legal advice. If you click continue, you agree with that. And you're going to want to outline the information needed to complete the interview, like I was saying earlier, and it's a good idea to collect the name and gender early on so that you can refer to the user by name, and that gender is used to create their avatar. Now we have taken into consideration people who are sensitive about their gender, so we do have a Learn More bubble that says the gender is only used for the interview to generate the avatar. And if it is used on the form, we will say how it's used so people can choose the gender they identify with. And then the next step would be the qualifications. And this could be more than one step. It could be broken out into two, but you do want people who are not going to qualify for the particular remedy to be out as soon as possible. I've seen interviews where there are questions that exclude people after they've entered all their information, and then it asks them a question about jurisdiction, like, do you live in Illinois? Like, why is that halfway through the interview? That should be right up front. And then next, you do want to get into that case information where you're collecting the substantive information that's filled in on the form. Following that, you can have sort of the housekeeping sections like notice information. If there's witnesses required for the form in the United States, a lot of our documents that are not court pleadings need to be signed and witnessed in front of a notary public. So you can collect that information there and notice to that attorney. So it's a good place to get it. And you can also collect the other party's address here as opposed to earlier on. And then the conclusion, you're just going to tell them how to save and print. You can include information on what to do next. It also helps to include information about how to file in a printout with the forms, a short instruction sheet, something that's less than a page is very helpful for the user when they get done. Because some people might be doing these at law libraries, at help centers. They might not have access to a computer in between when they get their forms and when they go to file. So it helps to have everything they need. And that is it for me. If anyone has any questions, please let me know. I have included my contact information there. If you would like to see samples of any of our interviews or sample scope documents, please send me an email or give me a call. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Christopher. I just want to say I went through your website, and I actually, Mary Legal Aid Ontario got divorced from Ontario Legal Aid, and they had a child, Alberta Legal Aid, and I have to say I was really impressed because I went through, it took me about 45 minutes to an hour, but at the end of it I had a package that was 54 pages, but on top of that package was a list of instructions that was very clear. It said, take the top 3 documents to 740 Main Street on the 8th floor, go to this counter, have these people initial this. I mean, it really was, I was quite impressed with how geo-specific and how informative the instructions were on top. So if it sounds like I have form envy, I do.
Well, that is one of our most used interviews, so we do have a pretty comprehensive instruction sheet with that one.
I have a couple questions for you, unless someone in the room has something they want to start with. I was wondering, you talked about you work with developers outside for this. Do you find it difficult to find developers who are doing A to J work as opposed to other more sexier, exciting platforms?
Well, it's a pretty small community of ADAJ and hot docs developers, but there are a handful of people who are doing it. If you are not already signed up for LHI's listserv, I would recommend doing that. That's a great way to find developers. You can contact anyone who works for Pro Bono Net. Should be able to set you up with that, and also they should be able to provide you with a list of developers. I think they do maintain that. And you're welcome to email me, and I will try to put you in contact with people who I've worked with in the past.
Excellent, thank you. And Jessica, I was just wondering, we have a number of, particularly when we get into web-based platforms, accessibility issues that we need to conform with, and I'm wondering how well does the new, or how well will the 6.0 version of A2J Author help people with accessibility issues, whether that's site or so forth?
Sure. So in our older version of Flash, that didn't work well with screen readers. So the new versions, 5 and 6, are web-based, so they'll work better with screen readers that someone may have on their computer. We understand the need to be as accessible as possible, so we're shooting for WCAG 3 compliance in the future, but we're working through bug fixes now, and it's on the list of things that we're hoping to add into A2J Author. But those are kind of compliance standards for what colors to use and what screen size and how fast things move off the screen and whether the screen readers can use them, that kind of thing. So it's on our radar, and we're working on it. But now that we are web-based, it will be easier. We do have features built in, even to the older versions of A2J Author, that allow audio to be attached to every time there's a text block. So for every question or every learn more or every pop-up, you can have an audio file that will attach and play an audio clip to help those who may have sight impairment.
And now, just in terms of 6.0, what's the ETA on that?
As soon as possible. So we're working, we have some outside developer coding help that are helping us build the back end. And we should have the version that is mobile responsive. So we call that one 5. 5 and 6 are kind of married together on our back end now. But the version that's mobile responsive, web-based, is on LHI's testing servers right now, and we're finishing last-minute integration bugs with them. The version that's our document assembly by itself version should come shortly after that. So I'm hoping, knock on wood, the end of the year, but we've made promises before, so we're working. We're working as hard. Yeah, technology turns out it's hard, so we're working on it.
I have a question from someone in the room. It's Sherry McClellan, who's from the Legal Services Society of British Columbia. Sherry?
Yes, you had mentioned that they often posted on Canadian servers. I understand it still works in conjunction with the hot docs server. So does it port information then from the Canadian server into an American-based hot docs server and assembles the documents?
So I think I got part of that, but is Canadian data being stored in the U.S.? Is that kind of the gist of the question?
Yes, I believe so.
Yeah.
So I do not believe that there's a hot docs server connected to the Canadian A2J Guide interviews. I don't think they're hosted on Law Help Interactive. They're hosted on a server in Canada that Legal Aid of Ontario manages, and I think they use it for online intake for the most part too. So there's no document produced. There's no hot docs attached to it.
I'll just clarify, when you say Legal Aid, that's one of the Legal Aid clinics that are working on that project. So it isn't Legal Aid Ontario, it's one of the clinics that is doing it, just so people are, my boss is looking at me going, what have you been doing?
Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, they work with the legal clinics.
I mean, I do think that LHI offers their services to the Canadian organizations as well. I'm not really sure. I would contact them for more details. They would know better than we do.
Okay, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any more questions that people may have out there? If not, listen, thank you so much, Jessica and Christopher. We really appreciate you taking the time this afternoon, particularly on a Friday.
Oh,
No
you're
problem.
welcome.
And as I said, I'll certainly be in contact with you in the next couple of weeks. And thanks again.
Perfect.
All right.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you, everyone.